Hi.
Howdy everyone. Hope you're having a great morning or evening or daytime wherever you are.
Happy Thursday. Yuri and I were thinking of talking about people we disagree with, because I think that in the climate today, especially there's certain things happening in Malaysia where we're seeing a lot of backlash, we're seeing a lot of cyberbullying, we're seeing a lot of negative comments, and I think that it's human nature to want to voice our opinion, especially when we look at somebody, whether in real life or online, who we don't agree with. And if this person is behaving in a very appalling way, like the behavior is disagreeable, is disrespectful, maybe it's even revolting to you, what are you going to do about it, right? Because you kind of have to say something and kind of like voice what you believe to be good as well.
Yeah, on the internet, you know, we often see sort of things that go viral, right? Sometimes somebody says something that goes viral in a way that's perceived to be very negative.
Yes.
And you know, it's very common for sort of like, hey, did you see what this people are saying about what this girl or this guy is saying, right? And it's so offensive, you know, and it's such a terrible thing. And then everybody sort of like jumps on the bandwagon, right? So the question is, how do we productively and effectively address these things?
I think one of the first things that it's really important for us to sort of distinguish is, are we trying to teach someone a lesson or are we trying to educate someone? So I was just thinking about this in terms of the pandemic, you know, like a lot of people have our own opinions on whether you should go out, whether you should stay home, when you're out, whether you should wear a mask or not, like what are the good common practices and measures that you should take, and everybody has a different opinion, right? And I noticed when in Malaysia, when the lockdown started lifting, and the next day we're getting a lot of messages on group chats, you know, of like, oh my god, look at this market, there's so many people, you know, these people are all going out, you know, like these people, you know. So we keep hearing a lot of like these people, and it's with a lot of disapproval and even like judgment, like, wow, you know, like these people are going out, they're hanging out in a big crowd, they're not even wearing a mask, and it's
idiots and you know, they're fools, and people who just really stupid, or people who just not doing terrible things, or
even if you don't say in those terms, the tone of which we are like talking about these people is a lot of like disdain.
There's you know, in this kind of conversations, there's always the divide of people like them or him or her and people like us. Right? And there's this very clear divide in where we stand on in the situation, and also this sorry, and also this like this, how would I say, team mentality, like we are our team, like you know, whoever's on this side of the fence or the line, then we're all together in this together, right? But if you're gonna be on the other side of the line, then no, you're not part of this group, right?
And here's the thing, right? Like we all have values and beliefs that we believe are true and they're good, right? Like now,
or at least we feel that they're good.
Like in America now, there's this whole protest going on. And you know, people are talking about how Black lives matters, right? And it's something that we're fighting for and people really believe in. And then in the world, there are many things that we fight for and that we believe in. And I think that with all these going on right now, I think what is important for us to actually ask is it possible to achieve something without like having to make somebody the villain? Do you know what I mean? Like I think that, like especially with what's happening in America right now, people like police brutality, for example, I think that those who are involved in putting someone to death and causing the deaths of like innocent Black people, definitely there should be consequences, you know? But the kind of dialogue that we're having with each other, whether it's your family group chats, your friends group chats, whether it's online and all of those things, like, must we talk about people like they are the villain?
Yeah, and on
villain, what's that word? Vilify? Yeah, to vilify people.
Yeah, and on a sort of like a more localized and personal scale, even people that we deal with, let's say our colleagues, right, or our friends even, right, and they might have do things or say things that we don't agree with, and we feel that it's very either ignorant or stupid or foolish or whatever, and how do we work with these situations in a manner that is productive? And when I say productive, what does it mean? How do we move forward in a way that opens up channels of communication and understanding and allow for not just a fight, but sort of a discussion?
And the thing is though, like, must we vilify somebody? And I think that the human instinct is that if somebody is behaving in ways that we don't agree with and it goes against our personal beliefs and principles and values, we sort of see this person as like the enemy almost, you know, like a villain, right? And this can make us respond and react in a way that we feel justified. Like normally you wouldn't call somebody names. Like normally you wouldn't call someone something that maybe you would, like, how do I say this? Like maybe on the day-to-day basis, you wouldn't use words that are harsh, right? Calling somebody a bitch, an asshole, a bastard, whatever it is, right? And those are the things that, those are words that we normally don't use, right? Because we're a good person, a good person. But then when it comes to people we disagree with, and it's not just like an argument, maybe they behave in ways that we find are very against our own values and our own beliefs, and that's a very strong emotion, obviously. In that sense, a lot of us kind of feel justified to be mean to this person.
Yeah, to act in a hateful way.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because, you know, we wouldn't act to normal people that way. If we were having a discussion, we wouldn't like call them names or be sarcastic to their face or something like that, right? But the moment we feel that some sort of like either a harm of our principles, or sort of I feel sort of insulted, or maybe I feel almost like personally offended, right? Yeah. Then I feel like it's fine to react with force, with the same kind of hatred or force that I have felt. And I completely understand the source of that feeling, because I know that I've experienced things like this before, in the sense that, like, even if someone has said something to me, right? Not even just like some big online thing, maybe it's just a very small personal thing. I feel this need to say something back to make them feel the same way that I felt.
And sometimes it's not even directed at you. Maybe somebody posted something online that it goes very against your beliefs, goes against maybe your religion, goes against your principles, goes against your values. And this person is saying something that you think is very stupid. And then that's when we unleash the monster within us.
It feels like it's okay then to sort of bring hateful things to this, because they deserve it.
Because we're good people.
They need to learn a lesson.
Yeah,
right?
Like we're trying to teach someone a lesson. Yeah. And in that journey, we justify our own bad behavior. And one of the key things that I do want to talk about here is that even when people behave in ways that we totally find disagreeable, other people's bad behavior does not justify our own. And so don't ever fancy ourselves, like we don't ever fancy ourselves like a good person and standing up for what's right by giving hate to another person. It's kind of like, you know, I'm normally a good person. Actually, I'm a very good person. That's why I'm giving hate to that person, because that person is deplorable. That person is not, it doesn't deserve to be alive, you know? And so because I'm standing up for what's right and I'm fighting for what's good, I can behave in ways that is so hateful towards this person. And when you look at that in totality, it doesn't make sense, because if we are such good, kind people, then why would we give so much hate to somebody? Other people's bad behavior, no matter how wrong does not justify our own wrongful behavior, you know?
Yeah, then it's a sort of a cycle that keeps on creating the same kind of hateful actions, words, and emotions.
And then we kind of like delude ourselves into thinking that we're fighting for something good. Like we're putting someone in their place. And we talk about this today as a topic because we're seeing this happening now on Facebook or Instagram, on social media. There's a lot of these comments and these opinions being shared, and they are shared not in a let's educate people kind of way. It's let me teach you a lesson. And with that kind of venom and the kind of objective, it's almost like we want to bring the person down. We want them to suffer. We want them to regret to their very bones, you know? So that we have to look internally at ourselves and like, hey, where is this venom coming from? Where is this hate coming from? And why do I feel this need to release it towards this person?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that like the feeling of anger, right? Like I looking at this comment here by Maria. She says it's okay to be angry. It's an emotion, but putting your anger into the next level, that's not an okay behavior anymore. It is natural to be angry. It is part of being human. Right. But how we choose to react based on that is up to us. And if we want to be happy people and living happy lives and creating happiness in the world, the anger has to stop. The hate has to stop where we are. So we're saying that, you know what, there may be cycles of hatred causing more hatred and more hatred, but I want it to stop here. So what can I do instead of just be quiet?
I think what Yuri is saying is like focus on what's helpful and what's useful. So like for like right now in the US, a lot of protesters are doing something useful. They're taking action to stand up for what they believe in. So that's helpful and that's useful. Now like hurling abuse towards somebody, whether it's words or physical action, whether it's online or in real life, that's not helpful. That's not teaching or educating anybody anything, you know? So I really believe that if we want to create change, whether it's a personal belief of the kind of change, like, you know, maybe with somebody's religion we don't agree with, you know, and we think what they're saying is completely wrong, and you feel like you want to have a conversation and you want to maybe share ideas, you know, and maybe you want to, and if you see somebody doing something that you think is wrong, like throwing rubbish, for example, onto the street, right? Then what we want to do is to educate somebody, and education has a lot to do with why. It's helping somebody understand why, or just putting the idea out there for this person and giving them enough facts and research or, you know, information without ever wanting to teach them a lesson, you know?
Yeah, it seems like, you know, it's effective when we think it's effective when we say we got to teach people a lesson, you know? Because like sometimes, like say a kid steals a candy bar, and then you just like give him one slap across the face, right?
Teach you a lesson.
And you say like, never do that again. And in a way that sort of teaches them the lesson, right? Like, okay, yeah, it's painful, you know, when Yuri finds out, and then he gives me a slap, right? But it doesn't go down the path of why this is wrong, or what does it cause? Like what pain or suffering in the world does this cause?
Like to the person, as in like, will the person understand? Like we can teach someone a lesson by slapping them in the face. So there's fear, right? So we're inciting fear, but the person doesn't understand. But at the core of it all, we have to look at ourselves and our ego, because at the end of the day, when we are standing up for what's right and we're fighting for the good of the world, we need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we truly doing that for the good of the world? Or are we just serving our own ego? Because sometimes we just want to teach you a lesson. We want to tell you off, you know, and then we get this sense of satisfaction from calling you names, putting you down, calling you a bitch, a bastard, an asshole, you know, and it satisfies us, right? It makes us feel like we are right, even if the person does something completely horrendous, right? The fact that we call this person names, or we're trying to make this person feel bad, it gives us some sort of satisfaction. And when we find ourselves going down this path, I think we have to ask ourselves like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I serving myself, my own ego? You know, like, we just don't want to delude ourselves into thinking that we're trying to help the world, trying to help people, but actually we're just serving our ego.
Yeah, and sometimes the need, like on a more personal level, like for myself, right? I used to sort of entertain delusions of the people who bullied me in school.
Okay.
And to sort of say, well, one day, you know, like I'll get, like, or maybe just imagine some sort of revenge, for example, right?
Yeah.
And I obviously thought that it was fair.
Yeah,
You know,
getting revenge
for
on
sort of the
bullies.
torment you experience, right?
What kind of revenge did you imagine? Like them falling down, or like,
I don't know, or maybe just them feeling repentant, or maybe just, you know,
karma will get you.
something happens. Yeah, there's no real specific like, or you die or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But just maybe something bad that happens, right?
Yeah, like you want something negative to happen to the person.
Or makes the person feel repentant.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not productive, I feel. Like, that's not something, you know, like maybe in movies it sort of encourages us to see like, oh, you know, once you do this, the bad guy now knows why they are bad, and they're stricken down, and they will turn a new leaf, you know. I don't think it's so simple, and I think that all it does is sort of like creates more hatred within yourself that sort of cycles throughout all aspects of your life, right? So if you want the feeling and the pain of hatred to sort of go away, right, you cannot perpetuate hatred, because revenge, or sort of like saying that, oh, you did something bad and I'm going to do bad things to you.
Oh, I wish that lightning would strike you down.
I wish bad things upon you, which is also a form of hatred, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to help, right? You be free of pain of hatred.
Yeah. What do you mean, Rona, by taking the position of a moral high ground and being a bit self-righteous? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What in regards to what?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think,
are you talking about yourself or other people?
Yeah. What we're trying to discuss here is to see whether we can find a happier place, for a more joyous way to live.
I think a lot of the times when we are commenting on other people, or we are like judging other people, it comes from a place of self-righteousness. Obviously, when we have an opinion, we think it's right. That's why we're saying it.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't think it's wrong. Otherwise, we won't say it. So, you know, when it comes to like people saying stupid things, you know, we're judging that, and then we're feeling all self-righteous. And because we're feeling self-righteous, we feel like we can be a little bit more mean, a little bit more like, you know, sarcastic, right? And we're not actually doing ourselves any favors by behaving this way, because ultimately, if you have a child, and you're behaving this way, it's this. Are you even proud of yourself? You know, like I think about these kind of things, right? Like if I think that I'm a kind person, then is my kindness conditional? Oh, if you're kind to me, then I'm kind to you. Oh, if nobody offends me, then I'm kind to the person. But if this person says something offensive, or if this person says something disrespectful, then suddenly I turn into this like unkind person. You know, like then I'm neither here nor there. I don't even know who I am. And I think that this is doing ourselves a super huge injustice. Self-righteousness makes us blind to growth. So we're so like feeling so ego is so lifted that we're blind to what we're actually doing. You know, if a camera were to record us and our actions and what we say, we will be super embarrassed when we watch the video back. It's that in the moment you feel so self-righteous that you feel like, yeah, what you're doing is right, you know, like what you're doing is the best. But actually,
I think the question to ask is what's most productive? What's most effective, right?
What's the goal actually?
Yeah, what's the goal? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand the goal, because sometimes at some times of our life, right, the goal is to sort of be right. Right? Or be sort of like be the
thought leader too.
Yeah, or be the person who imposes justice, right?
Yeah.
And I can understand that.
Yes.
Right. But I think generally in our conversations here, it's like when we say productive and effective, is that how do we create more peace, harmony, joy, happiness in the world, within ourselves, with the ones around us, and within the sort of world at large for ourselves. right?
Yeah. Stephanie, I'm glad that you find this logical and rational. And this is just Yuri and my opinion. And I think that we just feel like, you know, a lot of things, like us as human beings, instinctively, we do want to put people in their place. You know, there is this sense of ego within us human beings that we do want to seem like the one who knows better, and that we're a bit superior in our moral ground and in our values.
We are definitely familiar with this emotion, right?
Yeah.
And what we try to practice in our life is to try to catch ourselves
Yes.
having these emotions, because these emotions honestly are not very pleasant, right?
I mean, it feeds the ego, so it's satisfying.
Yeah, it feels satisfying. You know, it's kind of like drinking a lot of alcohol, right? You think,
or Coca-Cola.
You think like it's great for you because you feel so much like you want it, right?
Yeah.
But
and then you puke everything out.
yeah, and then ultimately at some point you realize that it's just not very healthy for you.
It hinders our self-growth, but we are blind to
Yeah.
it. So we go down a slippery slope of unhappiness, but we don't know why we're unhappy. So we keep blaming the world, and we keep blaming what's wrong for our unhappiness.
Yeah, you know, I remember I said this before in one of our live chats that there was one time in my life that I thought anger was a very, very productive thing, that I wanted to have more of it in my life. Right? Because I thought that, you know, when I am angry, I always feel like I get things done more. I'm more powerful, you know.
Yeah.
So, and you know, like sometimes you feel like, oh, when you're angry, then you can tell this person off. So I feel like I need more of that anger in my life, right?
The righteousness comes from anger. And the more angry you are, the more confident you feel in your righteousness. And that's where we become brave to say things we normally wouldn't say. So although we feel brave,
exactly.
That's the opposite of bravery.
That bravery, right? It was what I felt I needed more of. But
it
now,
needs to be filled by anger.
Yeah, and it needs to be filled by anger, because, you know, when you're not angry, you kind of like, oh, you know, maybe I don't have to say
I can't say this. Maybe people will think this of me.
But when you're angry, you know, in this moment, you say, wow, I remember I really did tell him off, and it felt so good, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, wow, this might be the most productive thing. I should have more anger, right? and
then what made you think differently?
I think it just felt like the anger in itself is this unpleasant feeling. It's kind of like saying that being drunk, you think it, you know, when you're not very clear about how it feels, the flavor of it, it feels maybe it could be pleasant. But when you really look deeply into the nature of it and how it feels to you and how you react to it, it feels very destructive to me. Right?
I think we can all recognize the feeling of junk food.
Yeah,
all of us can.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying, it's not what's good and what's bad. It's just that when we feed off anger and we use anger for courage and bravery to say certain things, mean things, hateful things that we feel very justified saying because we feel offended, we feel disrespected, we feel that that person is wrong, and so we feel very righteous. And the more we say it, the more satisfied we feel.
Yeah.
And especially online, when we say it and we see other people saying it and they're liking our comment and we're interact the haters with haters and we're supporting each other, it feels very empowering.
Yeah, you know, if I were at that era and that like had all these social media kind of things, I think I would have typed out much more stuff and like my personal opinions on this thing and stuff like that, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that this feeling of satisfaction, we have to recognize it as junk food. Like, you know, because we know that feeling, and you know what true happiness and peace feels like, right? And here's the thing, whatever it is, we need to look at what's useful and what's helpful. So in the world today, there are many things that you want to stand for, you want to help, you want to educate, you want to change, right? Like Yuri and I in Malaysia, when it was time for elections a couple of years back, both of us joined the protest on the street, and I made videos about it because I believe in change. Right? We wanted to create positive change for our country. And I think that we should always take action to create change. Now, I see some comments before and some of you saying that some people are very self-righteous, they have a high moral ground and they're going to say whatever they want to say, right? Now, the thing is this, when people are saying these things and we feel triggered, first thing is we have to recognize that even though, like Yuri and myself, we don't agree with like hatred, right? Spewing of cyberbullying and hate. When we see people hating on each other and when we see cyberbullying, obviously we feel some kind of trigger, right? Now, what action are we going to take? That's the most important thing. Now, if I see someone saying something or doing something that I don't agree with, I have to think, number one, if I'm going to reply to this person or argue with this person, is it going to create change? Is this person going to change their mind? Very unlikely. Are they going to get super defensive and argue back and it'll downward spiral from there? Very, very likely. And so for me, this analysis helps me not like use my ego to make decisions. I'm using my brains to make decisions. So it's kind of like, oh, if I want to engage and teach this person a lesson, are they really learning anything? Am I actually creating any positive change? Answer is very likely no. So I don't go down the path of giving into the anger and the satisfaction and like serving my ego. Then what I do about it is figure out what can I do to create that change. Maybe not towards this person. So personally, what I do is that we talk about it like this, right? So when we see things online that we don't agree with, we're like, you know what? We can send a different message. We don't need to teach that person a lesson. We need on our part to take the responsibility to perpetuate positive messages that we believe in. We don't need to teach anybody a lesson. We just need to spread what we believe is good, right? If you see someone being treated unfairly, go take action so that justice can prevail or the right consequences are done, but not like spending time arguing with people and sending hatred. That's not very useful.
Yeah. I mean, there are many ways to get something done, right? And to sort of like, I think the path of trying to beat someone into submission, right? It's a bit like trying to beat water into submission. I mean, it seems maybe to kind of work, right? But ultimately, people are what they are, right? And then that is the question of ability and skill. I mean, like working with people and it's a skill. It truly is. It's like math or writing or something like that.
It's just that they don't teach it in school.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I think if we are more, we pay more attention to this, we are more mindful of this, then we can see what we do in our lives that are more effective and what we do in our lives that are less effective. And then just do more of the stuff that's more effective, right? And sometimes, you know, it might seem that like, oh, if I slap this guy, then it seems quite effective.
It's going to stop him from doing something.
Yeah, but in the long run, right? Does it, you know, like somebody was saying that if you punish people, right, all it does is make them learn how to avoid being found out.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, one of the main reasons we talk about this is because Yuri and I, when we see comments, even from friends, like these days, there are a lot of opinions about politics, you know, about
health, about the
world, about the pandemic, about what's going on in the US, about Black Lives Matters, everything. There's a lot of opinions, right? And some of like the people we know, and even our friends that we see them posting certain things we don't agree with. Yuri and I, we don't agree with. Now, we have a choice of like going to this person or like replying to what you're saying and going that, no, that's wrong, blah, 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 whatever it is. And we could start a conversation, but let's look at the objective, right? Is the objective to change this person's mind? Is it really? Because if it is, then we need to be able to have enough empathy and understanding and research and facts and the ability to have an open conversation with our friends about this, right? And it depends on whether we want to go down that route and put in all the effort or not. Now, the other thing we could do is we can just unfollow this person, right? And it's not anything other than we choose not to engage with it. Now, when let's say we choose not to engage with a person, but we don't agree with their, let's say, political views or whatever, and we don't want to see the updates, I think what is really important for the both of us to practice is understanding, which means when we decide not to engage in, like, you know, teaching someone a lesson or imposing our views onto the person, and we choose not to do it, then we have to be able to let go of the judgment towards the person and going from the perspective of, like, I understand that this person is very different from myself, right? And it's okay that they are different. So then I can choose my action. You know, I can choose not to engage. I can choose not to even have a friendship if I want, if I decide that that's not what I want. It's my choice.
Yeah.
But I don't have to feel all angry, offended, self-righteous about it. In fact, we can have a lot of understanding towards this person. You know, understanding doesn't mean agreeing. And I think that it's important in this day and age where cyberbullying is so common that, you know, when somebody does something that you're like, what? How can someone say that? How can somebody do this? Right? And then sometimes I have this reaction, I'm like, huh? How can someone say that? You know, it's so rude, right? It's so disrespectful. Sometimes I feel that. But then the next thing I want to do is like, okay, I want to understand where this comes from. This person has a reason for why they're saying all these things. I want to come in from the perspective of understanding. So I'm not going all self-righteous onto this.
And to understand ourselves as well. We have our own conditionings as well of what's right or what's proper or what's allowed, right? And sometimes when I feel offended or something, I look at myself and say, what part of me feels offended? And why do I feel offended?
Yeah.
Like let's go down the path of reasoning here and see why I'm offended. And just to understand myself. I'm not saying that I shouldn't be offended, but I see where are the points of me that are offended, like where does this come from, right? And I think that helps me understand myself and to find a measure of peace as well, rather than just feel this emotion and don't know what's happening, right? I just feel upset. This thing upsets me, right?
You know, it's so interesting that you use the word offended too, because I've noticed this, you know. I've noticed that, especially online, a lot of people feel very offended. It's like, you know, if a person says something that is politically incorrect, and then I see a lot of people being very offended by it, right? Yeah. Why are we so easily offended? If we don't agree, we don't agree. But why do we have to be offended?
Yeah, you can see something that's very different from how you see the world. And then that is just what it is, right?
What does it mean, actually?
Like if you see someone who...
Like offended.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like if you see someone who eats, you know, like flies, for example, right? And you don't eat flies, right? So like, then you see something interesting. You see someone who has a different point of view, right? If you feel like people shouldn't like kill babies, and then you see someone who believes that people should, then you observe something different, right? I mean, it's not subscribing to it or saying that that's okay, but to look at it and say, oh, that's really different, and then start from there, right?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest disservice we can do for ourselves in life, okay, is feeling offended. Like, don't take being offended as an indication of how like right and morally superior we are.
Offense is not useful.
Yeah, like if you say or think like, you know, I'm offended, you know, like some people I realize may say this because they feel like it portrays how much more superior their values are, you know, as a way to like link the two, but somehow or another, like I think that willingly taking on the suffering of being offended, it's really foolish.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, I found one very useful thing for me, at least. You know, I have not used it yet, but I think it to myself.
Haven't used it yet. What's that?
It's this tool, right? That when someone has a very different point of view from me, one of the questions I can ask them is, what would it take for you to think otherwise? Because that's really what you need to know.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Right? Like what would it take for you to believe that the world is round instead of flat? right? As opposed to, no, the world's round, there's all this proof, blah, 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 and blah, 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 the satellites do this, that. But the question is, I would extend to them, like, what would it take for you to say, yeah, I could believe that? And you tell me.
Yeah.
Then if you say, oh, I need this, then maybe I can say, okay, let's explore this together and see if that's the case.
That's so true. I mean, with all this going on in America right now, like, I wonder what it will be like to speak to a white supremacist and ask, you know, what would it take for you to have a different perspective on race and skin color? Like, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
You know, just to kind of understand, like, yeah, rather than, because, you know, the natural instinct for us is to tell the person
and
like,
keep on pushing what we know to be the proof of the existence of our facts, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes even when I have a conversation with someone who, or I look at a post or something, that I think that in my mind, like, I think of, imagine asking that person a question, and it sort of also calms me down, because it makes me think that, oh, this person is a person who probably has a way of thinking that I don't know about, and how can I assume, right? They think like me.
What if the person replies aggressively? Like, you know how we're talking about this and we have this imagination or this thing that it will go, we're like, oh, then we're having an interesting conversation. But let's imagine, like, you know, like somebody that you're talking to, right? And then instead of them answering your question, they turn the tables onto you and like, what would it take for you, you know? Like,
then I would tell them, this is great. Because if you ask me the question, I would tell you what I think. Then it would make me think as well. I have been wrong before, right? So maybe you can tell me, but I can tell you what I feel is definitive, right? That will help me say, maybe you're right, right? And if anything that happens, at least I understand more, right? Or maybe we can look into this together and we gain this sort of like harmony of exploring this together.
And this is funny, you know, like, since we're talking about supremacists, right? People who think they are supreme. I think that in the human world, we are very used to having a hero and a villain. And so everybody wants to be the hero. And therefore, people who are similar to ourselves are considered the same. Like, same, I don't know, like family, same kind, or whatever it is. But it's somehow like we need to find the villain in our life story. And I don't know why that is.
And we need to understand as well, like, where they come from. Because there's so much presumption as well, right? From them about other things, and from us about them. Like, to open a dialogue and truly say, like, why do you believe this? Or what would it take? Or what were the reasons you started believing this? And what would it take to change your belief, right? And that way we understand what they believe in. Maybe it's some kind of biological imperative that they feel is true, right? Maybe they believe in some kind of like religious type belief that causes it to be the case. So many possibilities that we ourselves don't know, right? So it's great to be able to open up the channels and say, hey, I want to see why. And when I see why, it helps me understand better where this hate comes from.
And also it helps us kind of develop our own method and strategies for creating the kind of change we want to create. I think, like, you know, when we don't like something and we deplore it and somebody's behavior pisses us off and we find somebody very disagreeable, I think that we can do ourselves a favor by trying to understand this person and their perspective, because when we go down this path, we can develop better methods and strategies into creating the kind of change we want to create, because now we have information about how certain people think and how certain people behave. But most of the time, like what we're seeing online right now, it's a lot of like attacking, a lot of telling you what's right, you know, and there's very little understanding that's going on. And the thing is this, I think when we have that dialogue, we're also trying to get the person to change. You know, we're trying to get the person to apologize We're trying to get the person to
see that they're wrong.
Yes, to feel guilty. We want the person to admit guilt.
Yeah, like it's so clear that your belief is stupid and wrong, right? Like Earth is flat. Like, you know, and we don't even open up the possibility of a dialogue. Just a dialogue. I'm not saying the Earth is flat, but I want to talk to you.
You know, at the end of the day, sometimes we begin by fighting for what's right because we want to create positive change. But somewhere along the lines, because we're so deep in it and our ego is so deep in it, we kind of like find ourselves going off the trajectory, and then we just want to be right. And then we just want the person to admit they're wrong. And then we forget about like the creating change part, you know? And it's kind of like this back and forth kind of like hate against hate kind of argument.
Yeah, exactly.
And it creates no change and it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. And that I'm constantly reminded of this one person that I saw in a documentary about Flat Earther, right?
Flat Earthers, yeah.
And obviously
People
I believe the world
Earth
is a sphere, right? And this person was from NASA, right? So obviously a scientist. And
a NASA scientist believed the Earth is flat.
No. This other gathering of people, of scientists talking about flat Earthers, right? Okay. And he was saying that we laugh at them and we do this and we say this, and this creates no change at all. You know, these people are people who actually want to find out the truth. And the people who fallen through the cracks and believe what they believe because of certain reasons. And if we don't extend our sort of like, let's look at this together and understand that, then it's such a wasted opportunity. And I thought that it's fantastic that a person, because most of the other people are just making fun, right? Or saying that this lifestyle is so stupid, you know, ha ha ha, it's so funny. But this person had a different approach, and I thought it was remarkable.
Inspiring.
Yeah, it inspired me to look at so many things differently.
I think one of the main things that we are always reminded of is our own need to feel superior. Like Yuri and myself, I think that, you know, we do have this reaction where we kind of feel like we need to laugh at like this stupid thing that someone said.
There's a them. There's always a them.
Yeah,
right?
like we'll say, oh my god, can you believe this person said this? You know, we'll send it to each other, right? And then we're like, oh my god, you know, this conspiracy theory is so dumb or whatever it is, and I can't believe, you know, people who are smart are saying things like that, you know, and we will talk to each other like this, right? And this is why I think it's important for us to have this kind of conversation, because me and Yuri, we can continue going down, indulging our superiority and we think we're so smart, and we think that, you know, we are so perfect, and that, I don't know.
We at least think we are better, or we are on the right side of the line. You know?
Yeah, we're like we are the sane ones, and we are the smart ones, you know, and it's easy for us to just continue down this line. But like I said, the reason we don't want to go down this path is because we realize that this is indulging in our ego. We are doing nothing, helping nobody, educating no one, creating no change. All we're doing is lifting ourselves up and putting people down.
Yeah, and that ego is also very unproductive for our own happiness.
Yeah.
Because we expand the ego, the sense of a fixed self and the idea of who we are, and when someone challenges that, we are unhappy as well. So it's two sides of a coin.
Yeah. So I want to like point out, like, whenever you feel very self-satisfied, you know, like, you feel like that is a sign that, like, oh, okay, hang on, like, okay, wait. That's my ego taking the lead here.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to observe my reaction. Why am I feeling this way? Hello? If I am so confident and I am so smart and I am so at peace, then why do I need this, like, burst of satisfaction to make me feel good? Yeah. It feels good. It's like eating sugar, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It feels like eating sugar. It feels like that kind of drug-like feeling. Yeah. And it feels great then. But I always find the stuff that's tied to the ego always have a exact flip of the coin. That amount of good feeling you feel also has the flip side of the amount of bad feeling you feel, especially when it's on the opposite side.
What kind of bad feeling?
Like maybe when someone criticizes that aspect of us, right? Or when we feel like we are on the other side.
Then we take it so personally.
So it works both ways. When you have that large ego that gives you a lot of so-called pleasure, there's also the aspect will give you the same amount of suffering.
Yeah. So the little thing that somebody says that you don't agree with or whatever, you're gonna whoa, you have this big reaction.
And when it's ego sort of like dissipates, right? What happens is you don't get that kind of wow, I'm so satisfied kind of pleasure, but you also don't get that kind of suffering from the opposite.
It's just like junk food, right? Like when you eat junk food, after that your body feels kind of bad, right? It's very hard to escape that. Hi, Joshua Wong! Woohoo! Just in time.
Yeah.
We're talking about satisfaction and the ego. Maybe you can join us. Yeah. So honestly, like this whole topic, it's very inspired by number one, what we are seeing on the internet right now and the conversation that is going on and the kind of like hatred and negativity that is out there because there are people who disagree with other people's views, okay? Whether it's personal, like colleague against colleague, a family thing, or whether it's, you know, with what's going on in America right now, and you know, there's so many things, whether it's with a pandemic, everybody, or whether it's a conspiracy theory, everybody has their own opinion about things. That's one. That's why we're talking about this. But the other thing, like I said, closer to home, is that Yuri and I, we do observe our level of satisfaction when we both feel like we're right. Like, you know, we can maybe even laugh at people. We can even like poke fun, you know, between the two of us.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to not, like, we want to be able to recognize that.
Yeah, and we don't
ourselves.
want to just say that it's not good to do that. Because
Yeah.
why is it not good to do that?
I mean, it's fun.
Yeah,
and it feels satisfying.
Yeah, and it's like doesn't harm anyone. So what does it do?
Yeah.
Right. But it does have that very strong development of the ego aspect.
Yes, which
right?
is what me and him don't want in our lives. Yeah, because I always think to myself, you know, like, you know, Xandria, if you're so confident and you're so smart and you're so good and you're so kind, then you don't need to judge anybody. You don't need to feel righteous in any way for you to be able to empower yourself, for you to be able to create positive change. That's what I always remind myself of.
Yeah. And we don't have to sort of like tie our identity to a sense of, oh, I am this and I am that, right? I am a smart person, or I am a good person, or I am a righteous person, right?
Yeah.
We just do things that head towards harmony, towards peace, towards joy.
It's basically how you want to live your life.
There's
you know?
no labels required. It's just sort of like acting and the way the choices we make.
Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, it's like everybody have their own objective, right? Now, if your objective in life is to live a happy, joyous life that is free from a lot of angst and frustration and anger, and all of that is suffering, basically, right? Everything of that we experience, even satisfaction, it steals away that joy. Right? Because we all recognize what joy feels like, right? It's gratitude, it's growth, it's realization, it's being present, you know, like that's happiness, that's joy, and everything else steals that away. And so it really depends on what our personal objectives and goals are. If yours is to live a happy life where when you die, you have no regrets, then don't waste a single second, if we can, on judging, on scolding, on teaching someone a lesson, on getting frustrated. We can use our time to take action, to create positive change, to influence people in a different way. We can always stand up for ourselves. We can fight for what's right. We can do all of that, whilst not needing that ego satisfaction, teach you a lesson kind of boost.
Yeah. So I think if we are more mindful of that, then I think we'll find ourselves in a more effective way of living.
This comment is so interesting, Trina. Why would the lion have to laugh at the lamb if he truly thinks he's the lion? You just eat him up. You just eat the lamb.
Or they just do what they do. They don't
need to laugh.
Most of the time they don't even know they're a lion or whatever. They just do the thing they do.
They don't identify with like, I'm a lion.
Yeah, and like lions are at the top of the food chain. They just do what lions do. Right? And lambs do what lambs do. And the lamb isn't inferior to the lion for being a lamb, and the lion isn't superior to the lamb. They just do what they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good way
Yeah.
of saying it. Manon here says, I think anger and frustration makes us feel more alive somehow, like give weight to our feelings and opinions.
Yeah.
But I agree. That's exactly
That's
what
the thing,
Yuri
right?
was
That's
saying.
why people get addicted to all sorts of things, whether it's sugar or whether it's drugs or whether it's, you know,
It does. It gives
adrenaline
us a
or
boost.
anger,
Like,
for example.
even
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
feels more alive. And what does that mean, right? This sense of me and being
Yeah.
here, right? But it also fuels the pain, right? The suffering.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like in a lot of storybooks, novels, when the heroine or the hero needs to channel their power, right? They usually channel their power when they get really furious, right? And then suddenly, ta-da, they can like harness
Furious.
their power within. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, we cannot forget also that a lot of like our pop culture, you know, what we watch in movies, what we read in books, it always tells you that anger gives you some superhuman powers and you can like have courage and be brave when you're feeling angry.
Yeah.
And so it dumps us down because the smart us, I think the logical us can understand that anger does not give us any kind of power. It just makes us cowardly. I always think of it in this sense, right? If you can't say something to someone when you're sober, but you can say something to someone when you're drunk, is that bravery or is it cowardly? You know, if you can't have this conversation and confront somebody about something that's bothering you when you're not angry, and you can only do it when you're angry, is that cowardly or is that bravery? Only you can answer that question yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Ultimately, is it conducive for happiness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's,
Ashley?
as long as they're not hurting anyone, then you need to take a breath and realize that not every situation is about you. The way others behave is not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we're talking about. I think when it comes to saying that nature is what nature is, right?
Other people's bad behavior does not justify our own. If we give in to the animal instinct to put somebody down, to try to teach them a lesson or whatever it is, then it becomes about us. You know, we're making
and that doesn't mean we can't influence change.
Yeah.
Can bring about positive things, right?
Yeah.
Just in different ways.
Yes. So we can always try our best. Like Yuri and I, we have so much respect for protesters, people who not just put in money and effort to organize like teams and support groups to create positive change, whether it's to do with the government or whether it's to do with culture or racism or whatever it is, you know, like that. A lot of people are creating really positive change, and when you're really doing that, you have no time to go hate on other people, honestly.
Yeah.
You know?
And
So,
I always think that the positive change always begins with ourselves. And that when we do work on ourselves, we really do create more positive change in the world.
yay! Okay, so I hope that you've had like a good chat. I mean, we're chatting. I hope that you've enjoyed the
I
chat.
hope you enjoyed our company.
And this topic.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us. We'll see you again next week, alright?
We hope you are taking care wherever you are, you know, being healthy and being safe.
And safe. Yeah. Sending you lots of love and be happy always.
Bye.
Bye.